up on Primetime News, chief nuclear envoys from Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo agree to put more pressure on Pyongyang to halt its nuclear development programs. Korea's household debt hits a new record high, setting off alarm bells for economic experts who fear it could dent consumption and trigger a credit risk. And the total number of Koreans diagnosed with Middle East Respiratory Syndrome stands at 5. That's the biggest concentration of patients outside the Middle East region. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Wednesday, May 27th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Paul Yi. Thanks for tuning in.
As military threats from Pyongyang raise tensions on the peninsula, the chief nuclear envoys from South Korea, the United States, and Japan met for trilateral talks in Seoul.
Among the key agreements reached is stronger pressure to denuclearize North Korea while continuing efforts to pursue dialogue. Hwang Sang-yi starts us off.
South Korea, the U.S., and Japan are set to ramp up pressure on North Korea. Speaking to reporters in Seoul, U.S. Chief Nuclear Envoy Sang Kim said that's one of the agreements reached at Wednesday's trilateral meeting.
I think we agree that we should be exploring all opportunities to increase pressure in terms of better, stronger implementation of existing sanctions, but also looking at all other opportunities and avenues to increase pressure.
The talks come amid heightened tensions on the peninsula following North Korea's claims over progress in its nuclear program and testing of a submarine-launched ballistic missile. Refusing to comment on the authenticity of the claims, Kim said Washington submitted a letter to the UN Security Council Sanctions Committee expressing U.S. concerns. At the same time, the officials said they will not stop their active efforts to bring North Korea back to the stalled six-party nuclear talks.
As we agree on the importance of holding meaningful dialogue with North Korea, we exchanged views that we will continue such bilateral and multilateral efforts.
While the multilateral dialogue has been stalled for over 6 years, the officials outlined the importance of maintaining five-party unity with China and Russia. South Korean envoy Hwang Ji-hye stressed that Beijing is on the same page with the three allies on North Korea's nuclear ambitions.
China opposes North Korea's nuclear development. It holds the same position with South Korea, the U.S. and Japan on not tolerating North Korea's nuclear program.
The South Korean and American envoys will fly to Beijing on Thursday for talks with their Chinese counterpart, Woo Da-wei. Hwang Sang-yi, Arirang News.
And despite international pressure to denuclearize, North Korea has issued another threat. This time, it's a video in support of the regime's claim to have successfully test-fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile. But speculation lingers that the footage may have been manipulated. Connie Kim reports.
A missile surges from what looks like an underwater submarine. With a loud explosion, the missile breaks the surface of the water, flying into the sky. Shortly after, the screen fills with flames indicating the missile has exploded. The North's propaganda website, 우리민족끼리, released its 2-minute video footage on Wednesday, an effort to back up its claim to have successfully test-fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile, or SLBM. The video captions read, "North Korea's ballistic missile can directly target Guam and Hawaii. Pyongyang can create chaos in Seoul with just one or two of its missiles hitting the capital city. The SLBM will make the combined South Korea-U.S. defense system useless, and its strategy for North Korean invasion will fall apart." However, the authenticity of the video has not yet been confirmed. The video quality is poor, and the footage of the missile breaching the water is unnatural. Its release follows international skepticism over the success of Pyongyang's test firing earlier this month. South Korea said it was an ejection test, not a firing test. The U.S. and China echo the sentiment, saying Pyongyang has not successfully test-fired an SLBM and is at the very early stages of developing this weapon. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The South Korean military says North Korea has recently deployed a high-speed wave-piercing boat to its west coast. Watchers have raised concerns about the new vessels, which are equipped with stealth capabilities, making them difficult to detect by radar. Na Hong-kyung gives us a rundown on this new military hardware.
North Korea's VSV, or Very Slender Vessel, can pierce through waves at high speeds of more than 90 kilometers per hour, even in heavy seas. Military officials in Seoul say the vessel the regime deployed to a naval command in the West Sea seems to be carrying 30mm guns and is capable of launching torpedoes. South Korea has been aware that Pyongyang was building the vessels, and around 4 to 5 are said to be in operation, but this is the first time military officials have admitted that the boats have been deployed and spotted near the de facto inter-Korean maritime border in the West Sea. Experts say this is a huge threat to South Korea's frontline islands, especially because the boats are covered with stealth paint, making it more difficult for the South Korean Navy to detect them by radar. They add Seoul will have to review and revise its naval strategy against the North because South Korea's fastest boats are guided missile patrol gunboats with maximum speeds of about 70 kilometers per hour. In response to Wednesday's reports, Seoul's defense ministry said it is keeping a close eye on the development, adding that the military is on standby to immediately counter any and every type of provocation from the North. Seoul is planning to deploy 70mm ground-based guided missiles by next year to deter threats posed by the regime's air cushion vehicles and the new vessels. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News.
Focusing now on the political arena in South Korea, rival parties did make some progress, tentatively agreeing on a pension reform bill. But they're now in another deadlock over the Seoul ferry bill. Kim Young-gil tells us what was achieved so far today.
Korea's ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy will put the Public Employee Pension Reform Bill to a vote before the full parliament on Thursday. If the pension reform bill passes, public officials will have to pay more while in service, and they'll receive less after retirement. The plan is expected to save the government an estimated $9 million per day. Regarding the national pension scheme for the general public, the rival parties agreed to continue their discussions via the creation of a new panel of experts, in addition to a parliamentary committee they agreed on earlier.
Once the parliamentary committee and the panel of experts are created, we will undertake negotiations seriously to reform the national pension system.
The two parties have been at odds over whether to change the national pension scheme to cover 50% of pre-retirement income, up from the current 40%. The opposition party also withdrew its demand for the resignation of Korea's health and welfare minister, but said his claim about an increased taxpayer burden as a result of raised pension payouts was regrettable.
Health and Welfare Minister Moon Hyung-pyo must take responsibility for making groundless arguments about our stance and saying that increasing national pension payouts will be a burden on the nation's finances.
Also on Thursday, lawmakers will vote on more than 50 economy-related bills that were put off last month, after last-minute disagreements on the pension bill canceled voting. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye invited Korea's small to mid-sized business leaders for an annual meeting today, praising their contributions to creating jobs in the country. The president vowed more support for SMEs so they can focus more on hiring young talent. Choi Yu-sun reports.
Laying out figures that show small and medium-sized firms make up 99% of businesses in Korea and that they hire nearly 90% of all employees, President Park urged the country's SMEs to continue to offer high-quality jobs, especially for young job seekers. Meeting with representatives from SMEs at her office, the president vowed to support them by building the infrastructure to make Korea a center for startups in Asia. President Park's creative economy drive includes regional centers that foster startups and help them launch businesses overseas in collaboration with conglomerates. Several of the centers already plan to connect local entrepreneurs with foreign investors and offer conglomerate distribution channels to globally commercialize their products. Along with her summit diplomacy, President Park believes these efforts will not only help Korean SMEs to expand globally, but will give young people a hand in finding employment opportunities abroad. President Park then talked about the Korean service sector's potential to further expand and create more jobs. She highlighted the government's efforts to ease regulations and systematically develop the service sector, specifically in tourism and healthcare. In fact, the SMEs asked the government to speed up the regulatory reforms, with related bills now pending parliamentary approval. Expressing her frustration at the National Assembly, President Park called on the lawmakers to pass the bills promptly and help the country's young people realize their potential and find high-quality jobs. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
The Korean economy showed signs of recovery in April and May and will continue to improve. That's according to the Bank of Korea Golden Book, the equivalent of the U.S. Federal Reserve's Beige Book released today, which monitors economic activities. The book showed recent gains in the manufacturing and service sectors gave a boost to the domestic economy. Consumer sentiment also rose on the back of low oil prices and a recovering housing market. The report predicts consumers will keep spending more, but warned that snowballing household debt and low employment rates may offset those gains. In fact, Korea's household debt set another record high in April, with the amount of money borrowed doubling from March. While some experts see the growing liabilities as a ticking time bomb, others are not too concerned. Shin Se-min reports.
Korea's household debt hit an all-time high in the first quarter this year, raising concerns in this already debt-ridden country. The Bank of Korea says the total amount, roughly $992 billion as of the end of March, is up a little over 1% from the previous quarter. While that reflects credit purchases and loans from all financial institutions, the Financial Supervisory Service says local banks extended around $483 billion in loans last month, up nearly $8 billion from March. That marks the biggest rise in more than 9 years. The record high debt comes on the back of the country's historic low key interest rate of 1.75% and a rise in home transactions, an increase that's in line with government efforts to lift the sagging housing market. However, the central bank may choose to hike the key rate sometime this year, reflecting an expected increase from the U.S. Federal Reserve. If that happens, the mounting debt could become a big problem. Still, some experts say it's a little too early to be concerned.
A person's repayment ability is more important than the mounting household debt. If people with a supporting salary are borrowing money, the rising amount of debt isn't that big of a deal.
While some experts say the recent debt increase is due to seasonal factors, others say the borrowing trend is likely to continue. They say more needs to be done to contain the problem, which will hamper consumer spending, leading to slower growth. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
An appeals court in South Korea has ruled slightly in favor of local authorities in a tax refund suit against U.S.-based Lone Star funds. At the center of the dispute is the purchase of a skyscraper in the heart of Seoul. Kim Hyun-bin has more on the case.
The Seoul High Court, partially upholding a lower court's decision, said Wednesday there is a legal basis for the Yeoksam tax office to levy roughly $58 million in corporate tax on Lone Star funds for the purchase of a local skyscraper. In 2001, Lone Star purchased and sold the commercial high-rise in Seoul's Gangnam area, gaining a little over $224 million in profits. At the time of the purchase, local tax authorities withheld 50% of the sale proceeds and levied a little over $90 million in transfer income tax, and Lone Star filed suit. In 2012, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Lone Star, upholding two previous court decisions, and ordered a refund, stating that the $90 million transfer tax violates local tax law. The local tax authorities challenged the ruling, which prompted Lone Star to file a countersuit to cancel the tax. Lone Star had been claiming that it should be exempt from paying the corporate tax because its headquarters was based in Belgium, with which Korea has a double taxation avoidance deal. In Korea's first investor-state dispute case, which wrapped up on Saturday in Washington, Lone Star is suing the Korean government for nearly $4.7 billion, claimed that it was forced to pay unfair taxes and sell off its stake in Korea Exchange Bank at a loss in 2012. The second round of hearings is set to resume on June 29th. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Another case of Middle East Respiratory Syndrome has been confirmed in Korea, lifting the total number of patients to 5. But as our Han Deun explains, health authorities are reassuring the public that the risk of an outbreak is very unlikely.
The fifth person to contract the disease is the doctor who treated the first patient. After developing a high fever and diarrhea, he was taken to an isolation ward for testing on Tuesday, where he was confirmed positive for the virus. This is the fifth MERS case in Korea in 7 days, since the first was confirmed last Wednesday. It may seem like the virus is spreading fast, but the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the possibility of the rare disease spreading to other parts of the nation is very low.
That's because the primary source of infection for all the confirmed cases is one person, the first patient. There has been no secondary or tertiary infection.
Authorities have quarantined the doctor's family members in their homes while maintaining the home quarantine for the roughly 60 people who have had any kind of contact with the first 4 patients.
In order to enhance the efficiency of the home quarantine, we have deployed more welfare workers to watch over them.
Meanwhile, one more person suspected of having contracted the disease has been taken to a designated hospital for tests in Jeollabuk-do province. She's known to have stayed at Doha Airport in Qatar, where a number of MERS cases have been reported, for 2 hours during transit before landing in Korea. The CDC, however, downplayed speculation that the virus is spreading quickly, saying her symptoms are closer to an average cold than MERS. The test results are expected on Thursday. Han Deun, Arirang News.
The country's birth rate is picking up. According to Statistics Korea, a total of 40,400 babies were born this past March. That's up 6.6% from last year. It's been 3 years since Korea's monthly birth rate had surpassed the 40,000 mark. It also marks the highest on-year increase since the agency began collecting related data in 2000. An official explained that more women between the ages of 35 and 39 gave birth during the cited period. The country's marriage rate also spiked in March with an on-year increase of 8.8%.
And for the top international headlines, we connect now to Stephen Choi at the News Center.
FIFA, the world governing body for soccer, is under fire yet again for corruption allegations related to the 2018 and 2022 World Cup bids.
And in Zurich, Swiss authorities raided FIFA headquarters and arrested 7 senior officials accused of accepting over $100 million in bribes. Stephen, how is the situation unfolding?
Well, Swiss plainclothes police officers escorted the suspects from a five-star hotel in Zurich. They also raided the organization's headquarters where they seized documents and files related to the case. FIFA Vice Presidents Jeffrey Webb and Eugenio Figueiredo were among those arrested. The arrests were made on behalf of the U.S. Justice Department and based on an FBI investigation that's been running for more than 3 years. Early Wednesday morning in New York, the department charged 14 defendants, including the officials arrested in Zurich, with racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering conspiracies. U.S. officials told Reuters that the 9 officials and 5 sports media promotions executives face extradition to the U.S. Separately, Swiss prosecutors launched a criminal investigation over money mismanagement and laundering for the 2018 and 2022 World Cup bids won by Russia and Qatar, respectively. A FIFA spokesperson said in a press conference that the organization is the victim and they are fully cooperating with the authorities. The bombshell comes just 3 days before the FIFA Congress meets on Friday to elect its next president. Incumbent Sepp Blatter, who's not facing any charges, is up against Jordanian Prince Ali bin Al Hussein for the presidency. And moving on, the European Commission is set to announce a plan to fairly distribute the overflow of migrants coming into Europe. the plan's controversial detail, a two-part mandatory quota system that will allocate the Mediterranean Sea migrants across the European Union.
As of tomorrow, we are planning a proposal towards member states for the activation of the emergency mechanism, where a substantial number of asylum seekers will be able to be resettled from the frontline member countries such as Greece to other European Union member states.
Now, the first quota will spread 40,000 migrants across EU countries over the next 2 years. The second quota calls for the relocation of an additional 20,000 migrants still living in conflict areas. France, Spain, and several other countries voiced their concerns over the system. The UK flat out refused to take part. And ending on a lighter note, Forbes has unveiled its list of the 100 most powerful women in the world. And for the 5th year in a row, German Chancellor Angela Merkel took the top ranking. Forbes said that Merkel's re-election made her Europe's longest-serving head of state, pushing her past the U.S. presidential hopeful Hillary Clinton at number 2. Melinda Gates of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen, and General Motors CEO Mary Barra rounded out the top 5. President Park Geun-hye edged out media mogul Oprah Winfrey for 11th place. She was noted for overseeing the world's 14th largest economy, bordering nuclear-armed North Korea. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. Good night.
The hot, dry weather we've been having makes it feel like midsummer, and for many parts of the peninsula, the temperature rose for the 3rd day in a row, and it was even hotter day here in the capital today. So the heat wave advisory expanded to many parts of the country, and the dry weather watch is still in effect across the nation. So some cities, including Daegu and Gwangju, are under the effect of both heat wave and dry weather advisory. So it seems like the intense spring heat wave will continue, with tomorrow as hot as today, but less sunny with patches of clouds. And the daytime high here in the capital will rise to 31, and Daegu and Gwangju will see a high of 33, while Busan peaks at 25 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other regions, it seems like Daejeon will hit 32, while Jeju and Dokdo Island rises to 24 and 23 respectively. So when can we expect some relief from this scorching heat? Well, we'll have to wait till Saturday for things to cool down, and we're likely to have some much needed rain on Saturday as well, but temperatures will jump right back up to the high 20s on Sunday. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that brings us to the end of the newscast. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Paul Yi.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Please join us at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.